Shemitah. This year in Eretz Israel is the Shemitah year. And we know we can't plant, we can't plow during the Shemitah year. There's certain things that we can't do during this 7th year in Israel. But there's a cycle of 6 years, and after the 6 years comes the 7th year of Shemitah. And during that time period, the first year and the second year, you're supposed to take off 10% of your crop and bring to Jerusalem and to eat in the Holy Land, in the Holy City. We're going to see more about that as we come up. First, the Mishnah on Yud Beis Amud Aleph is 12a. Is going to open up about a tree. We're still discussing Uri Miklat. We're still discussing goat exile. 12a7. Top of the page. Is that in yours? You see the same Mishnah in yours?
It says Mishnah, it's Mishnah will kill an exile that leaves the boundaries of.
Yeah, that's it, right. So now we're going to start with that Mishnah, and we'll see. We'll get into Ma'aseh Shem. Elon shu omeid b'toch hatchom. If we have a tree that's standing within the boundary, as we said in the previous Mishnah, that if a person leaves the Uri Miklat, the city of refuge, there's an allowance for the relative, called the Goel Hadam, to kill the person who left the city of refuge. The question now in Mishnah is, if the person who was the murderer who killed unintentionally is found on a tree, and part of the tree is within the city, part of the tree is within the city boundaries, which would be safe haven, with the Goel Hadam, where the relatives cannot touch him, but part of the tree is outside. Part of the tree, let's say you have the branches are one place and the trunk is another place. So how do we look at that tree? How do we look at where he's situated on the tree to identify his location? So that's what the Gemara is going to discuss. So we have Elon she'omei b'toch hatchom. We have a tree that the bark of the tree, or the trunk of the tree, is standing within the boundaries of the city of refuge. So technically, the trunk is in a safe place.
Yeah,
However, but the branches are not the chutz l'tchum. The branches of this tree are outside the boundary. By the way, now in this time period, when we're talking about branches of a tree, we need to think about Sukkot. Because Sukkot, you have to be careful that when you build your sukkah, should not be under any branches of any tree. Sometimes we have a lot of trees that the branches go very high, and sometimes therefore a lot of people, before they check their property, they go up earlier, they check their property, and they hire people to cut the tree branches. But the tree branches should not allowed to be hovering over the sukkah. So even though a person might have a beautiful sukkah and he has schach, he has proper schach, but if on top of that schach, it could be 20 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet, 60 feet up in the air, if there are branches that are hovering over the sukkah, that's the halachic issue. So therefore you have to be careful. Make sure your area that you place the sukkah, you look up and make sure there's nothing, it's clear sky. Okay? We once had a situation, we rented a place for Sukkot, and from a religious person, so the person who was renting the sukkah should know about the halakha, but Erev Yom Tov, I mean, we were going to be putting up the sukkah, and so he had a real guy who goes up on trees and getting the real machine and to cut it down. So that's what happened. But it's something you have to be aware of. So Elon shu omei b'toch hatchom. So again, the tree is inside the proper boundary. It's inside the safe place. But for nofo chutz l'tchom, maybe I should send someone on the, are you on the group, Mr. Batesh? Have you joined the group on the chat, of the Gemara chat?
You might have to open that.
Yeah, so if they have one of the guys, so 'cause I want to ask someone to send it out to say that we are on. Just to send it out. Hi, could you send out that we are on? Okay, so now, the case one was the trunk was in the safe place in the city of refuge, but the branches were outside the city of refuge. Or case two, or omeid chutz l'tchum, or if the trunk is outside the tchum, v'nofo no b'toch, but the branches are hovering into the area which is safe haven. So how do we identify this tree or the different parts of the tree? Do you say, you know what, wherever the, if you're by the branches, you have the status of the branches, and you're by the trunk, you have the status of the trunk? No, we don't say that. What does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says, Hakol holech acha hanof. Everything goes after the branches. So that means it's all about morning, Ariel. Morning.
Yeah, this is fine.
If you want to send to the group that we're on, it's all about where the branches are. Morning, Yaro. Welcome back. We've been waiting for this man for a long time. He's been out of the country. Good. Good to see you, Yaron. Good to see you. Welcome back. My honor to see you.
Good.
It's better when you're here.
That's when we got the coat.
Okay. Very good. So, yes. So here, listen to the case. We are on. Everybody said Birkat Torah this morning. Everyone said Birkat Torah. So we're on Yud Beis Amud Aleph 12a, 12a7 in the Art Scroll. We are discussing the situation where we have a tree, and the tree is situated. Let's say you have that trunk of the tree, the big, the round trunk of the tree is situated, let's say, in the city of refuge, okay? But the branches go outside the city of refuge, okay? The branches are going into the other area, or the opposite. The trunk of the completely new. Good morning. Morning. We're gonna have slichot here at 7:45. Will be slichot. Oh, very nice, beautiful. There's a baby naming happening today. So we have the tree, two parts of the tree. So if the guy is sitting on let's say the guy who was the Rotseach, he went ahead and he killed, and then he goes onto the trunk of the tree. Let's say the trunk has a certain area that he could go ahead and stand on, and he goes and he stands on the trunk of the tree. The trunk of the tree is inside the city of refuge, but the branches go outside the city of refuge. So now the question is, how do you define the location where he is? Do you find his location by where he is actually on the tree, on the trunk of the tree, which the trunk of the tree is in the city of refuge? Or do you look at it, since the branches of the tree are going outside the city of refuge, we consider him outside? What did you say?
Sounds like the opposite. It's not. You're saying it's the opposite.
So So the Mishnah here states, we're going to see we'll see more in the Gemara, what the Gemara will conclude at the end. But this is what the Gemara is understanding at this point. It all depends where are the branches. If the branches are outside, on the other side, if the branches are in the city of, not outside the city of refuge, let's say this is the trunk of the tree, and this is still in the Ari Miklat. This area right here, we have a nice trunk of a tree. Here's a big tree. It's in the city of Miklat. But there are branches that are going like this. So now that there are branches going like this, do we say, what status does he have? Does he have the status of where he is, which is he's on the trunk, and the trunk, right? Is everybody with me in the case you sent to the group, Ariel? Thank you. The trunk is inside the city limits, in the city of refuge, and therefore he will be safe. Or do we say that since the branches, because the significant part of the tree, let's say you would say, is not the trunk, it's about the branches. The branches usually have fruit. Maybe if you could say that would be the logic, perhaps. Do we look away after the branches? The whole trunk is all about, not about the trunk, it's about the branches. It's about what grows from the tree. So this opinion, the Mishnah at this point, the way we understand, it's all about where the branches are. The location, if you want to identify, let's say in real estate, right? Sometimes you identify a building, sometimes the building's on different, how do you identify the building? Where is this building? It has part of the building is on this side, and part of the building goes on the other side. Right, we talk about different things when it comes to damages. So here the question is, how do we and sometimes I'll call this building Fifth Avenue when it's not even on Fifth Avenue. On the side, maybe because they want to get the Fifth Avenue address, right? So they call this a certain, not this, certain places they call Fifth Avenue. It's not even on Fifth Avenue. But you can imagine if you have a building that part of the building is on one place, and part of it is another place, how do you identify the building's location? So you're not going to say that this building, so you're going to call this one address, so to speak. So now, right, you can't have, if you have something that goes over someone's property, you hit the other guy's ear rights, correct? But here the Gemara at this point is saying that we identify the location of the tree depending on where the branches are. For the Rotzeach. So now if the Rotzeach is standing on the trunk of the tree, and the branches go outside the city of Golot.
So even if he's inside,
even though he's technically on property of the city of refuge, but he's on the trunk. He's on the trunk, but since the branches are outside, so at this point the Mishnah's understanding that they can, right? And the Mishnah's at this point we are understanding the Mishnah that you could kill him because he's not. He's on, but the branch outside, right? He's on. He's on. Right, the tree, the trunk of the tree. Right, exactly.
So you say we go by the branches.
So there, even though he's inside, where is he inside? He's on the trunk, right? Not on the branches. You hear the case, Ariel?
So the trees here, the branches go out, so we consider it that the tree is out. So
that he is out.
The trunk is on the outside.
So very good.
He's on the trunk.
He's inside. He said, "Hear what Mr. Batet says? It works for his benefit too." If let's say the trunk is right over here on the outside, this is the trunk of the tree, the big round area, and he's standing on the trunk, and then the branches go inside. But even though the trunk is outside, he's safe. Why is he safe? Even though even though the trunk is outside the city of Miklat, it's not the city of refuge, the trunk, but because the branches go inside, he's safe. That's what, but it works against him if the trunk is inside and the branches go outside and he's on the trunk.
Inside the city.
Say it again.
Inside you see.
He's technically inside, but since the branches are outside, he's outside.
All based on branches.
All based on where the branches are.
Can you go come and pick it up from based on this or no? Because if you let's say half.
Here we're talking about, and we should show the Yachid. We have. Usually we would, if the tree, you asked also a question, how do you look at it regarding public property, private property? It's also a good question. Miklap is part of the city of it's part of the Levium. It's the Levium property. So the Gemara. So now look at the language of the Mishnah. Ilan. Let's look at the Mishnah. Ilan shu omei b'tuchatchom. The Ilan is situated inside the boundaries. V'nofo chutz l'tchom. Again, the trunk is inside, but the branches are outside. Or omed chutz l'tchom, or the trunk is outside. V'nofo noter b'tuchatchom. But the branches are going inside. Hakol holech achahanof. So the Mishnah says it all goes after wherever the branches are, that will identify the location of the tree. So therefore, even if you're on the trunk of the tree, we don't look, we have such a concept. You could have, let's say, you have milk, you have cereal, right? And you have in the cereal, you have, let's say, Rice Krispies, and you make them, even though there's milk in the cereal, it's called Rice Krispies, and the milk is secondary to the Rice Krispies. So you just make a mezonot on the cereal, correct? You don't need to make a mezonot and a shahakol, because it's secondary. It's like one unit. So the same way you can have multiple items, but you're going to identify it as you're going to say this becomes secondary to that. So too, we could explain when you have a tree. So even though there are two parts to the tree, there's the trunk of the tree and then there's the branches of the tree. But at this point of the Gemara, we'll understand that it's all about the branches. If you want to know what's significant here, it's the branches, and therefore, if you want to identify the trunk would be secondary to the branches. And therefore, if you're gonna name the location, where is this tree located? Where is this tree located? If part of the tree is out, part of the tree is in one area, the branches are in one area, the trunk is another area. So we say you go after wherever the branches are, that identifies the location of the tree. We look at the tree as one entity. We don't separate the trunk from the branches. To say that when you're on the trunk, you're in one location, and when you're on the branches, you're in another location.
So based on that, being safe and not safe, what about ownership? If the trunk is on your property, the branches are on another property, who really owns the tree?
Right, so you own the tree. If your trunk is on your property, what I would understand is you own the tree, but you are responsible to cut off, let's say, I presume your branches, that it shouldn't be damaging and causing someone's airspace. Why is this case different? Because right. Correct. Right.
And he's on the branch.
So if he's on the branch, he's safe.
Safe.
Okay, wait a second. If he's on the branch, where is the branch located? So, no, so if he's outside, he's no good. He's not safe. He's not safe because he's outside.
Property. Left the wall, the city limit.
The branch is going over inside
The
he's on the trunk, he's safe.
Right.
Where is he? He's on the trunk. Where is the trunk?
Outside.
And the branches are inside.
He's safe.
He's safe.
He's safe.
He's safe. Even though he's on the trunk, and even though the trunk is outside, but he's safe. Why? Because we look at the branches. Since the branches are inside, we identify this as a tree that's inside. We don't identify, where is this location of this tree? There's two parts to this tree. Part of the tree is inside, part of the tree is outside. So since the branches go inside, so if you're on the trunk, we look at you as if you're inside. That's what the Gemara is saying. Now, we'll see if we'll have more. Yes, we're going to have more clarification. This is the Mishnah. Yeah, but we'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to see more about how the Gemara is going to explain this more. Or a mini. So Gemara has the following contradiction. Elon shu omeid, if we have a tree, and the tree is standing. The tree is standing inside, let's say, there's different text over here. Or Omeid, what's the Vilna Gaon says? Omeid Bifnim. Tree, the trunk is inside. V'note l'chutz. But the branches are going outside. Whatever. Or Omeid b'chutz. Or if the trunk is outside, v'note lifnim. And the branches are going inside. So what do we say? Mikineged hachoma v'lifnim. Here we're talking, one Abraham. We're talking about Masa Sheni. Masa Sheni, in the 6-year cycle, for the 7th year, there's no obligation of Masrot, of Shemitah. The 6-year cycle, the 1st year and the 2nd year, and the 4th and the 5th year, you give 10% to Mr. B'tesh, the Levi, and then first you give 2% to the Kohen. Kohen gets 2% of the grain, and the wheat, you give, let's say, the first year of the cycle. Let's say this year is Shemitah. So let's say next year cycle. Next year will be the year after Shemitah. So the first year of the cycle, so you grew, you had your grapes, you had your olives, you had your wheat. So you said, now you got 100 bushels of stuff. So you take 2 bushels, you give to the Kohen. The average guy gives the Kohen, that's the first thing. You give him two bushels to the Kohen. And then you go to Mr. B'tesh and you give Mr. B'tesh, from the 98 bushels you got left, give him 9.8 to Mr. B'tesh. Give him 10%. So now you're left with close to 90 bushels. Then you take 10%, after you give Mr. B'tesh 10%, then you take 10% and you bring it to Yerushalayim. And you bring it to Yerushalayim, to the holy city, and you eat it in the holy city. If, let's say, you live far away from Jerusalem, if it's hard for you to carry, you could redeem it onto money. And you say, let's say there's a certain amount of value, and you redeem the value onto coins. Then you take the coins to Yerushalayim, good morning, and then you buy the food in Yerushalayim. Okay? That is what you need to do if you are, if you can't carry the food itself. And then you buy the food in Yerushalayim. That's Masa Sheni. So what's the case talking about? Now, there are certain laws about Masa Sheni. One law is, let's say this is food that grew this is Masa Sheni that I made Masa Sheni. I cannot eat Masa Sheni outside Yerushalayim. Forbidden. I can't eat it outside Yerushalayim. That's the first thing. The second thing is, besides I can't eat it outside Yerushalayim, once I come to Yerushalayim, once I come to Jerusalem, I'm not allowed to go ahead and redeem it anymore in Yerushalayim. I can't put it onto coins and then subsequently, once it reaches Yerushalayim, I have to go ahead and use it as is. I can't redeem it. I have to redeem it prior to I come to Yerushalayim. That is what the Gemara says. So now the question is, if I am on a trunk of a tree, and part of the trunk of the tree is outside the wall of Jerusalem, but the branch of the tree is inside, over the wall. Let's say this is the wall, the old city wall, the branches is going over, and I'm on the trunk, but the trunk is outside the wall. but the branches are over the wall. How do you identify where the person is? If I'm on the trunk, do we say you're on the trunk? It's outside Jerusalem wall, but the branches are over. And since the branches go into the old city, do we identify you as if you're in the old city, or do we say no? At the end of the day, you're on the trunk, and the trunk is outside the old city. Because Maisa Sheni has to be eaten. You have to, if you want to eat this food, I want to eat this, there's some grapes that is Maisa Sheni. I have to eat the grapes inside. If I'm not in Jerusalem, old city, if I'm not in Jerusalem, I can't eat it.
But he's on the trunk, he's considered inside.
So do you say, since you're on the trunk and the branches go inside, do we go after the branches? Or do we say, no, you're outside the wall, you're outside the wall. I don't care that the branches go inside. And that's what it says. This opinion says, and that's the Gemara's contradiction. Why, when it comes to Maisa Sheni, we don't look at the branches. We don't identify the tree. What'd you say? So so it's different than our Mishnah. That Maisa Sheni, when it comes to Maisa Sheni, we identify your location based on exactly where you are. If you're outside the wall, if you're on the trunk, and the trunk is outside the wall, you're outside the wall. It's all about where you are. That's what the Gemara says, and that's going to be the contradictions. That's what the Gemara said. So we say, if you're within the wall, wherever is by the wall, within the wall, is kilifnim. If you're within the wall, it doesn't make a difference if the branches go outside. Even if your branches go outside the wall, but if you're on the trunk and the trunk is within the walled city, you're safe. So we see from here that it's not about the branches. The branches don't play a role. It's all about where you are located. If the trunk is inside the old city, I don't care that the branches are outside. You're on the trunk, the branches are, and the branches and the trunk is inside the old city, you get the status of the old city. So we'll see tomorrow. We'll continue tomorrow with more details. Have a very good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, you too.